Chapter 83, 5th year, January. Sunday, January 4th, 1976. The rest of the Christmas break passed in a shaky, black and white sort of way. The Potters hosted a small gathering for New Year's Eve, but very few people came. Many of their close circle were now working for Dumbledore, Mrs. Potter explained, and busy with the war effort. Whatever that was, their peripheral friends had either turned their backs on the Potters, "We're blood traitors," James proudly declared, or else were simply too frightened to associate themselves. Moody would not hear of Mrs. Potter taking Sirius to Diagon Alley, but he needed shoes to begin the new term in, so they all sloped down to the village one afternoon. There, Sirius had fallen madly in love with a pair of brand-new black Doc Martens with bright yellow laces. Remus was pretty jealous. His own pair had been knockoffs from down the market and had fallen apart long ago. On their way back from town, they'd passed a couple of punks, a very odd sight in this little country village, but Remus supposed there were teenagers everywhere. One of them had a row of heavy silver rings in the cartilage of one ear. The other had green hair. Mrs. Potter had forbidden any dyeing of hair, but the night before school was due to begin, Remus had relented after hours of Sirius's begging and helped him pierce one of his earlobes using his prefect pin and a potato. It had bled, a lot, but Sirius was thrilled. Thus he presented himself before Remus the morning they were setting off for London. He had messed up his hair for volume, flipped it over one shoulder to show off his new gold earring, stood with his legs apart like a guitarist, hands in his pockets, big black bother boots.
Muggle insight.
He grinned at Remus, putting a cigarette between his teeth.
How do I look?
Like a twat,
James said. Like a rock star, Remus said, groaning inwardly. He was doomed. He had thought, hoped, really, that Sirius's trauma might have cooled Remus's considerable ardour towards his best friend, might jolt him into realising that, as friendship was all they would ever have, he ought to focus his energies on just being a bloody good friend. But no, Sirius was a demigod, and Remus was helpless to do anything but worship him. You silly, lovesick prat, he told himself. At any rate, Remus was glad to be going back to Hogwarts, where lines were very clearly drawn and there were exams to focus on. Sirius turned heads at King's Cross. Muggles didn't give him half a glance, but wizards, or, more accurately, witches, stared. Mary came clacking over to him on the platform in a pair of turquoise suede boots with a heel that brought her up to his height.
"Hiya, gorgeous!"
She chirped, then hugged him fiercely, and Remus caught the look on his face over her shoulder. He looked pleased. It must be nice, after a hard time, to hold someone in your arms like that, especially someone as emotionally open as Mary. Remus allowed his own pain to peak, then subside, slowly, concentrating on smiling and listening to Marlene tell him all about her Christmas. Once aboard, they bundled into their usual carriage, and Remus would be forever thankful to Lily, who suggested that he join her in patrolling the length of the train a few times.
"You look like you could do with some air."
She smiled up at him.
Yeah, cheers. Stuffy in there.
"Full on Christmas with the Marauders, then."
You can say that again.
"Poor Remus."
She linked her arm with his, leaning against him slightly. It felt nice, like a mini cuddle. She had a small, soft sort of body. Maybe that was the attraction with girls.
"I heard about Sirius."
She said very quietly.
"Is he okay?"
Yeah.
Remus nodded.
Think so. How did you know?
Sev told me, actually. I didn't believe him, but based on Sirius's new look."
Fuck. How does he know?
Lily shrugged.
Does everyone know?
"Only that he's been kicked out. And disinherited. No one knows why."
She was looking at him, and he realised she wanted him to tell her why.
It's complicated,
He said.
I don't think he'd want everyone to know.
"You're a good friend."
She patted his arm. Yeah, he thought bitterly. I'm a great friend, me. All I think about is Sirius. Sirius's safety. Sirius's happiness. Sirius's hands. Sirius's neck. Sirius's mouth. Sirius throwing me down on the bed and, stop, nope, not the time, fuck's sake.
"Oi!"
Lily was shouting suddenly, pointing down the long corridor of the moving train.
"If that's you, Crouch, I'll have your guts for garters."
Barty Crouch. Remus's stomach turned. He had been there on Christmas Eve. Nasty little creep. The fair-haired 14-year-old was tormenting some first-year girls, levitating their book bags over their heads. Lily, ever fearless, marched over, threatening detention, loss of points, even a few hexes. He sneered at her, but let the bags drop.
Barty, what are you... Oh!
The door of the nearest compartment slid open, and Regulus Black appeared. His eyes narrowed at Lily.
What do you want, Evans?
No need to be so rude.
She tutted. She raised an eyebrow at Crouch.
Stay out of trouble, or I'll be speaking with Slughorn. You're on thin ice already, and you know it. Come on, Remus.
She glanced back at Lupin, who was still standing a little way back, hoping to avoid doing his prefectly duty. Regulus's head snapped back. He stared at Remus, and all of the arrogance vanished. He looked so much younger.
Lupin!
He said stiffly. Remus just nodded. Regulus opened his mouth once or twice. He obviously wanted to ask. Remus wanted to hit him, but not in front of Lily. He remembered Sirius's desperate concern for his brother and saw it reflected back at him in Regulus's eyes.
He's fine.
Remus blurted out. Regulus blinked, then nodded, then turned back into his car, slamming the door. Barty scratched his head in shock, looking very confused. Thursday, January 15th, 1976. As the second term got into full swing, Remus realised he needn't have worried so much. He didn't even have to try to avoid Sirius. OWLs were just around the corner now, scheduled to begin in May, and if the fifth-year students thought their workload had been heavy during the first term, they were in for a very rude awakening. Remus combated this added stress by spending every spare hour he could in the library or in the common room perfecting practical spells. By the third week, he found that he had somehow become the unelected leader of a sort of homework and revision club. A group of fifth years, and even some younger students, had started coming to him for tips or advice on their own work.
Lupin! What's the flicky bit you do for locomotive spells? I keep doing it wrong.
Remus. Remus, is it aparetium or aparetium?
Hey, Lupin, can you show me how you did that timeline again? I keep forgetting.
Remus pretended that he found the whole thing a huge imposition, but he was secretly thrilled. He was good at something. The Marauders, when he saw them, thought it was hilarious, and had taken to calling him Professor. One student in particular had started joining him for regular study sessions, a fourth-year Gryffindor called Christopher Barley. He was quiet and studious, with serious dark eyes and long, slender fingers. He was shy, but when Remus said hello to him, he gave an incredible smile, lighting up from the inside. Remus realised after the third or fourth time he bumped into Christopher somewhere in the castle, by coincidence, that the younger boy had a crush on him. I'm getting better at this, he thought guiltily. The feeling was, unfortunately, not at all mutual. Remus was flattered, of course, it was hard not to be, but he couldn't summon up any feelings beyond sympathy for Christopher. Neither of them were brave enough to say anything, which was just as well. On top this, Remus had his prefect duties, which seemed to multiply with each week. After a Hufflepuff and Muggle-born prefect had been hexed before Christmas while on a nightly patrol and not been found until the morning, the heads of each house demanded that prefects patrol in pairs at all times. These patrols had become a nightly farce for Remus, as he spent most of the time trying to direct Lily away from wherever the other three Marauders were out of bed, working on some nefarious scheme or other. This worked most of the time. The problem was that since Christmas, James and Sirius had become more daring than ever. Armed with the Marauders' map and the invisibility cloak, they navigated the castle like a pair of pirates, pillaging and laying waste. Several times Remus would get back from patrol and find them not in their beds, only for the two boys to return an hour later, laughing and full of bravado, telling him how they had almost been caught this time, almost. Quidditch, too, kept them busy and apart from Remus. The match with Slytherin had been the first game of the year and resulted in a tie, which meant that both houses were now competing ruthlessly for the cup. With James now at the helm, the Gryffindor team was practicing twice as often every week, and Potter was dragging Sirius out every morning at the crack of dawn for a jog. In fact, between Remus's desire to study, his group of disciples and his prefect duties, his scant free time barely ever seemed to coincide with that of his friends. He barely saw them at mealtimes, or before bed, except for Peter, whose only extracurricular activity was his girlfriend. So it came as something of a surprise one night in mid-January when Remus bumped into Sirius. It was a routine patrol, and Remus and Lily's last of the week. The full moon was due in 2 days, and Remus had cunningly manipulated the prefect's rota to avoid those nights. He had offered to take charge of the rota for their house, in fact, and the rest of the Gryffindor prefects were obviously relieved. They were all good at their jobs, of course, with a strong sense of justice and fairness, combined with the courage to do the right thing, but few Gryffindors could ever be bothered with the admin. Remus seized this opportunity, and it had so far served him well.
Come on now.
Lily said as they descended the flight of stairs from the astronomy tower, usually a hotspot for after-curfew activity. Tonight it was deserted.
The main ingredients in a calming draught? List them.
Remus huffed as his hip clicked on the last stair. He was just glad he had a lot of energy shortly before the moon.
Lacewing flies, dew from a field of clover, seawater, and,
Oh, come on, Remus.
Lily sighed, exasperated.
This is fourth-year stuff.
I know, but I can never... Wait, did you hear that?
What?
Shh.
He was sure he had heard a sigh or a gasp, and now, in the perfect silence, he was aware that he could hear 2 more heartbeats nearby, pounding hard, and the scent of something else, something exciting and heady. He ripped back the nearest tapestry, raising his wand.
Lumos.
Shit!
Mary!
Lily gasped.
Mooney!
Sirius said.
What are you two doing?
Lily said, immediately adopting her authoritative voice, which Remus thought was eerily close to McGonagall's.
Can't guess, Evans.
Sirius winked at her. His arms were still protectively wrapped around Mary's waist, his hair had fallen forward untidily, and his mouth was redder than usual. Mary's blouse was unbuttoned almost down to her navel, and she was hurriedly trying to cover up.
We ought to give you both detention.
Lily raised an eyebrow at her friend.
Oh, be nice, Lily.
Mary cajoled, a soft smile on her lips.
Everyone does it. Just a bit of fun.
Well, as this is the first time...
Lily relented.
Come on, we're heading back to the tower now anyway.
5 more minutes?
Sirius asked, cheekily, much to Lily's horror. Mary laughed and slapped him playfully.
Bad boy.
She giggled, buttoning up her shirt.
Come on, it's not like anything else was happening tonight.
The 4 of them walked back to Gryffindor common room together, the girls giggling and whispering together, occasionally sneaking glances back at Sirius, before bursting into giggles all over again. Sirius played up to this, walking with an exaggerated swagger, tucking his long hair behind one ear and winking at them when they looked. He tried to catch Remus's eye a few times, as if to let him in on the joke, but Remus kept looking forward and said nothing.
All right, Mooney.
Sirius asked, when they were all in their beds and still had not spoken. He sounded a bit worried now. Good, thought Remus.
Yeah.
Remus replied, rolling over and closing his eyes.